na imejikita kikamilifu katika maadili ya Kikatoliki, ikilenga malezi kamili ya mtoto, akili, maadili na maisha kwa ujumla. Katika shule hii, elimu haishii darasani pekee. Dhamira ya shule hii ni kuhakikisha kuwa kila mwanafunzi anakuwa mtu wa kujitegemea maishani, mwenye uwezo wa kufanya maamuzi sahihi na asiyetegemea wazazi kila hatua ya maisha. Hii ni shule inayofundisha njia ya maisha kwa kuzingatia mtaala wa CBC. St. Elizabeth Academy inatoa njia zote tatu za masomo, yani pathways, na sasa inafundisha darasa jipya la grade 10. Walimu hupewa mafunzo na uboreshaji wa maarifa kila muhula ili kuelewa kikamilifu mtaala mpya na kutekeleza kwa ufanisi. Kwa mazingira bora ya kujifunza na kukuza nidhamu, wavulana na wasichana husomeshwa tofauti, jambo linalowezesha kila mwanafunzi kukua kikamilifu kitaaluma na kimaadili. Usajili unaendelea kwa madarasa yote ikiwemo grade 10. Kuanzia Jumatatu hadi Jumamosi saa 3 asubuhi hadi saa 10 jioni. Tunapatikana kwenye Tree Lane, Ngong Road, Karen Shopping Center. Kwa maelezo zaidi au usajili piga simu 0722873115 au 0782742438. Kumbuka, St. Elizabeth Academy, a way of life, a way of Christ.
This is Radio Wow Mini.
Answers from a Catholic on Wow Mini Soul Food.
I tell you, Mkatoliki simama kwa Mtakatifu Cecilia Makuburi on Radio Mini 88.3 FM, the Catholic radio station for all, into our very final hour. And being a Monday, my dear listeners, I told you that today we officially begin Answers from a Catholic segment 2026 and 19 minutes past the hour. My name is Bramwel Opiyo. 0712223385 is the SMS line, or on Facebook page Radio Mini 88.3 FM. I told you today we're gonna be dissecting faith and mental health with Dr. Madowo here. All right, ama namna gani, my brother Jackson Mukita. Thank you so much for always being a part of the show. In the meantime, my dear listener, today we step into a conversation many avoid, yet everyone lives with: anxiety, loss, loneliness, fear of death. All right? Hey, the search for meaning of these are not just in clinical terms, my dear listener. They are human experiences. In a world where mental health is often reduced to diagnosis and prescriptions, as we ask deeper questions, what happens when a soul is dislocated from its foundation? Joining us today is Dr. Madowo to help us explore the profound intersection between faith and mental health, drawing from existential psychology, theology, and living human experiences. Remember, this is not a discussion about denying pain. It is about understanding how faith can become the structure that holds the human mind together when life begins to fall apart. So if you have a question, feel free, 0712 223385, or on Facebook page Radio Mini 88.3 FM. Dr. Madowo, Happy New Year, my brother.
Happy New Year, Bramwel.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Been a long time no see.
Indeed,
Hey.
It's been some time since I was last here.
Imagine. How many months now?
Close, might be just a
A whole
the
year.
because
Exactly.
I don't remember being here last year, but the previous year was
Yes.
the last time I came.
Eh,
But now that I'm here,
Okay.
I'm very glad.
Karibu sana.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
very
now
much.
that you are here, this 2026, I'm glad that you are starting us off this series 2026, Answers from a Catholic.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, so kindly introduce yourself to our listeners and what you do before we begin our conversation today.
Thank you very much once again. My name is John Madowo, and my background is in clinical medicine and counseling psychology. I've had the experience for the last decade to work with, in this field of medicine, outpatient department and counseling psychology, supporting people. Majorly, a greater part of my work has been with in an institution of higher learning, where I've experienced or come across a great number of not only students but also adults who are facing various challenges in their lives. And it's taught me much that I hope to share on this platform over the course of the next 4 weeks with your support as well.
Okay.
And that of our friends whom you've met from the Catholic Answers group.
Okay, karibu sana daktari.
Thank you very much.
And I'm glad that we're going to be with you for a couple of time because mental health is actually a big deal, especially right now. And the conversation, daktari, is coming at the right time. And you see, there are arguments, daktari, that mental illness is often rooted in existential dislocation, not just neurochemical imbalance. So from your experience, daktari, how valid is this claim in today's mental health landscape?
Well, this is a very good approach you begin with. And for me, I'm going to attempt to articulate what my experience has taught me regarding the deep intertwinings of faith and mental well-being. And to construct a meaningful net framework, I will begin with the foundational definitions of faith and health. I will integrate this with Ivan Yalom's existential theory, particularly the concept of the four ultimate givens, and that is death, meaninglessness, isolation, and freedom. Well, existential theory, ideally, is one of the many schools of thought that scholars have come up with in an attempt to actually explain what human life is all about. There are many schools of thought. There are behaviorists, we have psychoanalysts and such, and wisdom. For me, what actually ties better for me, faith and health, mental health, and is the existential theory. And the four aspects that Ivan speaks of. Ivan was an American psychiatrist. And to just say a bit about him, even as you answer your question. He was, and also an existential psychotherapist, and he introduced these four givens, which are inescapable fundamental facts of human existence that every person must eventually confront. We can't escape them, really, whether consciously or unconsciously. He argues much of human anxiety and cerebral suffering, and even many forms of psychopathology, stem from the way we deal with or avoid dealing with these four realities. And today, we will want to look at each specifically and see how actually how each and every individual approaches these things, how we approach these four things or leave them, and how that would affect our bearing in daily life. And having spoken of explaining or rather providing a background of what faith is and what health is, I'll begin with what my understanding of faith is, I'll draw really heavily on what Pauline theology actually proposes to us, Pauline being St. Paul. He speaks of faith being an assurance of things hoped for, and the convictions of things not seen. So it's not really just blind belief, often you come across people speaking of, I am a Christian and I believe in God, and you could ask them, so what does that really mean? Is it just something you throw around, the idea about belief? or is it something that actually does anchor you down? Speaking of anchoring, ships are the ones that are anchored in the waters, and they need an anchor to stay grounded and not float away freely. And as Christians, when we speak of faith in a manner of speaking, that is really what our faith ought to do. In fact, Christ is the one that speaks of. Is it? Yeah, Christ is. Okay, let me deviate from that for a moment. But many times in the biblical stories we hear of, there are many stories about Jesus having been preaching by the sea and stuff and like that. Okay, and they talk about the analogy of the ship, of the human faith, or rather, of our Christian faith being like a voyage in the sea, is also quite a common thing. So to speak of being anchored or being grounded, or the faith being this particular thing that grounds us, is really an issue that any one of us as Christians really need to actually consider a little bit deeply than what actually we see amongst most of our contemporaries. Okay, we are told that it is rather an orientation of the person, of the whole person. That is his will, his intellect, and his perception towards an unseen but experienced reality too. And it's something that holds us, okay, as opposed to just being an idea out there. It kind of grounds us, holds us firmly in a particular position, in a manner of speaking, okay? We speak of assurance as an aspect of this particular definition. And what does assurance actually mean? Okay. It's a word drawn from Greek really, so it has two parts to it. There is hypo and stasis, which means hypo meaning beneath. So a foundation is something that sits under something, okay? And stasis, stasis is standing. So you stand below something, let's say like this building that we are in right now. For it to stand as it is, it must have a very good foundation at the bottom. Otherwise, the whole structure crumbles. We as Christians, as we are taught, need a grounding in which to stand for us to be able to survive the experiences that we face in our very lives. As I've already highlighted from the beginning, the four aspects of our existence that I wanted to look into or share with us today is that is our freedom, the very fact that we are mortal and that we die, the bit about our aloneness or loneliness, and the aspects of meaninglessness. These are experiences that we all face up to in the course of our existence. And for us to be able to withstand these four experiences, we must, for some reason, as our faith teaches us, have proper grounding. Failure, to which, as we are taught actually by, again, Christ, without having proper foundation, then we are like houses built on sand that actually would fall should storms come along. And you could take the four givens of life to be the storms that we would face. Actually, not would face, but we face every day of our lives. Every individual does face this, whether they like it, whether they are aware of it or not.
Okay. Dr. Let me just go to the very example that you've just given while you are defining faith of the foundation. For example, this building. The building is sitting on a foundation. All right? You've also talked of an anchor. Okay, where ships are anchored in the ocean at the dock. Okay, will I be right to say that based on what you've said, faith is described as something that faith is not something that we hold, but something that holds us?
Indeed, you'll be very much on point to say that.
Correct. Now, how does this understanding, Daktari, of faith reshape how we approach psychological resilience?
So, with a perception that it's something that holds us together, your question, if I get you right, is how does it reshape? Please just go over that again.
Yes. How does the understanding of faith reshape how we approach psychological resilience?
All right, so resilience, number one, is our ability to withstand the test of time.
Yeah.
Okay. And psychological resilience, and how does our faith bring us to reshape that for us? Well, I would say that human suffering and emotional instability and existential are not random phenomena as such, okay?
Yeah.
But they emerge from the tension between our inner psychological systems, our social structures, and the ultimate questions of life. Faith offers not merely a comfort, but a meta frame of meaning that enables individuals to withstand psychological fragmentation in the face of tragedy, loss and uncertainty and suffering. The thing is, meta, meaning something that is above our own understanding.
Okay.
Okay? So the perception, our own human perception of our experience is such that it's limited and does not offer us proper grounding in terms of these storms that we come to face in the face of death, in the face of loneliness, in the face of the fear of meaninglessness. We could sit and try and walk our minds or try and walk ourselves through these things in our minds and fail to actually come to a proper understanding.
Okay.
It is at that very moment that one must try. Actually, you hope to transcend that particular thought of your own. To transcend is to mean to go beyond your own perception. And following us in Christian faith, this is in Catholic teaching, faith being a gift of God, then we hope that we actually lack it, for those who actually believe, to have the perception that, you know what, we actually are not by ourselves or alone, but we have one whom actually does look down on us or after us, and that's God, and seeks to have us actually know what his plan is for us, okay? And in such moments, the hope is that one's faith is not actually divorced from their psychological perception of who they are, okay? There are two different perspectives. Your psychology and your theology or your faith are two different things that merge together to actually help you remain an all-round individual. Okay? And to the extent to which your understanding of both is actually up to task or is well-oriented, then you will be sophisticated enough to face up to the trials of everyday life. Okay? And, beyond, let's say where our understanding stops is where one's faith begins to explain or provide them with grounding to overcome the everyday anxieties. Okay? And divorcing the two or trying to actually downplay one's faith, the input of one's faith in remaining, let's say, I was going to remain sane, but I think that will be quite a leap. I would not want to take a leap in the sense that I may not have the exact, I may not be able to explain this.
But fair enough, well understood. There is a concept that you've now introduced while you are explaining.
Yes.
The concept of assurance.
Yes.
The one that you refer to as hypostasis.
Yes.
Whereby you said that hypostasis comes from two words. Hypo meaning beneath.
Yes.
Stasis meaning standing. So in other words, hypostasis means that which stands under. That is according to what you've said. All right? So if that is true, it means it is something very powerful. Okay? So how can faith practically function function as in this inner foundation during moments of emotional or mental collapse? Yeah.
Well, a very good question indeed. An assurance, still part of what Pauline faith teaches us. Okay, faith being the assurance of things hoped for. As you put it, it's a combining. It's, let's say, the foundation, as we had put earlier. And you're asking, how does it remain to be that basis upon which would remain to be held together in terms when things crumble, if I get you right.
Yes, yeah.
Well, we are told that faith supplies the ultimate why. Okay? And even as I attempt to answer that, I would borrow what one other existential theorist, and that is Viktor Frankl, actually is the one that came with the word. It's said that he who has a why can almost bear any how. Okay? So, with the understanding that in our faith, and this is as Catholics, well, Christians, our faith supplies us with the ultimate why, okay, providing the psychological and spiritual foundation that would render suffering bearable, okay?
Yeah.
Why I say this, our faith does not deny the terror that we face up. Let's say, for example, I spoke of one of the givens in life being, let's say, death, okay?
Yeah.
It doesn't deny it, but kind of gives us reasons to be able to transcend it. So let's speak of the experience of an individual who have lost a loved one. Okay, they might feel that they've lost everything. Let's say, in the sake of a young person who has lost a parent who has been the bread. Well, of course, their parent will be the breadwinner, but other than that, they will be there as a companion and friend, to hold their hand from the outset of their lives as children and show them the way. But all of a sudden they're dead, and now an individual is left by themselves to wonder what their life is, what has become of their lives, and how are they to make sense of that particular experience. Often and this is partly in my experience in clinical work, you find persons very much coming forward with anxiety and cases and feelings of hopelessness and desperation. And my job at that point is to try and find where they are and see how best to support them through that difficult time. And in a sense, meet them at their point of pain.
Yeah.
Okay, and help them navigate through that place to a point where they will find their strength to actually move forward. Okay? Because primarily at that point, let's say, of an experience of the death of a loved one feels like their world is crushed. Okay, I speak of a mother perhaps who lost a child, or a child who's lost a parent, or an individual, and we could speak of a brother who lost a sister, and such and such. Okay, so their world is crushed, in a manner of speaking, and the point of the caregiver, and this is the help, let's say the doctor or the psychologist or both at the same time, to help this individual hold themselves together, or pull themselves together in order to move on. Because you find that from time to time, some are so crushed that there are two responses. They either pick up a poor coping mechanism, whereby, well, drug and alcohol abuse is a common experience, let's say, in our country, okay? You find people who are steeped into the use of this, and they're shunned or pointed towards. Actually, let's say they're shunned by their peers and told not to man up. But you find that to a certain extent, if you dig deeply, these are people who are just trying to a certain extent, cope with painful experiences. And while those who perhaps shun them or call them out are persons who care for them but might be unaware of how best to support them through these experiences. Okay, which is often the case. Okay, that what we are trying to speak about here today is to provide some understanding that these persons who have had such unfortunate experiences and perhaps have employed such coping mechanisms that are not in themselves productive, if ever they get proper help, they would be able to be brought to understand that beyond their perception, and if ever they practice or have an experience of having lived their Christian faith well, or they could perhaps be open to it, they would have some sense of understanding. They would have some sense of meaning. They draw some sense of understanding from it, in the sense that you find that, let's say, death is not being the end of everything, okay, and that there is hope that even for those who live, they can still have meaning in spite of the pain of such loss. Okay. Yeah. I've taken a roundabout way to answer your question, but I imagine at this point that we kind of have provided some light into
exactly.
the question you asked.
And you've provided some light through the lens of Ivan Yalom, right? And Ivan Yalom gives 4 realities that we cannot escape.
No, yeah.
The first one, you've talked about it, the reality of death. And while you are talking about the reality of death, you've actually brought out a very interesting element on how people deal with the reality of death, coping mechanisms, all right? And now that brings us to the second reality that Ivan Yalom talks about, the reality of freedom. Daktari, when we speak of death anxiety as a hidden driver of many human behaviors, therein lies freedom again. And freedom is described as both a gift and a burden. Many people escape it through addictions, as you've talked about, through rigid beliefs, or even surrendering their autonomy. So how does faith help individuals carry the weight of freedom responsibly? Okay,
very well. I will comment on what Yalom speaks of regarding freedom and give a perspective of what our faith, how our faith would help us live it better. Okay. Yeah. So Yalom argues that human beings were radically free, which is actually true. Okay. There is no, in the sense that okay, I'll come back to that, but let me read through or give you a comment on what Yalom says. He says that there's no cosmic blueprint that is predetermined, script taking the shape of our lives, okay? And that every choice, whether deliberate or avoided, becomes a building block for personal identity. Sartre was one of these other thinkers who contributed towards this particular theory of existential. He argues that actually he makes an interesting comment. He says that we have been condemned to be free. But that's a very, let's say, contemporary thought, okay? Yeah. But from a Christian perspective, okay, we say that freedom is not an accident, okay? Okay, freedom is not accidental. Well, philosophers might look at that in a different sense, but we are not into philosophy today. It is a very premise of creation, that we have been created free, actually. Humanity is fashioned in so that love may be real and that God does not compel devotion. Our Lord creates us and takes the risk of granting us freedom to choose to love Him, okay, or not, okay. Because really, if true love cannot exist in compulsion, one must make that particular choice. Okay? And he invests in it, okay? This freedom is not experienced as comfort, but you spoke of an existential burden.
Yeah.
Again, that is the aspect of what Yalom tries to kind of open up and have us consider. And that it confronts the individual with terrifying realization, and there is no one else to blame for the shape of one's life. What he says that how we choose to live our lives is something that is upon us as individuals, and that we cannot really project that on another. Okay, that this awareness, to a certain extent, might bring one to try and avoid that reality by. Okay, so there is a theory of self-medication. You spoke of whereby people might adopt use of various coping mechanisms to avoid this reality.
Yeah.
Okay, at a certain point of one's life, let's say, we have various developmental stages. Okay, from the big, and this is from birth. We have toddlers, we have adolescents, young adults, and such and such. And from every developmental stage, let's say with our schooling system, there is hope of various achievements that one would perhaps have come to. Academic, for example, and maybe relationship-wise and such, okay? In the traditional, not really just traditional African life, but this actually, I think, is a universal sense. We have, if quite commonly, young adults might end up getting married and raising families, besides holding jobs for self-sustenance, and also besides having gone through school and graduated and hold degrees and such and such. So depending on what age set or age group one is in, there is some hope that one would have achieved something in terms of, let's say, a professional accolade, or come up with a degree, or have a degree, or a professional course that they or hold a job to earn a living. Failure to which perhaps they could begin to feel anxious. Okay, and maybe that failure might arise as a consequence of abuse of the freedom they were actually endowed with. Okay, so a young man with the gift of with the gift to actually, let's say, go to the university and have had their fees paid and all, who chooses therefore not to attend class, and at the end of 4 years have not graduated, might be depressed or anxious as a consequence of having abused their freedom in that regard, and adopt ways of coping with that are actually counterproductive to him as a creature, or let's say as an individual, that might cost him their life, that they to the extreme extent, or their productive time, in which case they might end up being very, so like one of my teachers used to say when I was in school, is they might end up being a cabbage. Cabbage simply meaning non-productive. That was also quite very extreme of my teacher, but yes, so there is abuse of freedom that leads to anxiety, and that is when one comes to the awareness that they wasted their time that they could have actually used to produce goods that would have been beneficial to them as a person, and those that have been granted them, and that is around them as family members, or the society at large. That is their contribution to the common good in a society. For example, right now, for you run this show and you inform us on the most pertinent points, or inform those your listeners on the pertinent issues that they will need to take part in, or rather take care of, or how they will need to take, in ways in which they could take better care of themselves. So this is your contribution to the common good, besides your family and anything else. So in such an instance as of when an individual becomes aware of the loss of what they've lost as a consequence of lack of their input in their time on earth, then it brings the issue of that will make them anxious, they retreat to addictions, or project this on others. Say, you know what, I'm like this because ABCD, because of you who's kept me from being able to do XYZ. Okay, so you meet people with making such arguments. But in psychology, the job of a psychologist is try help these people unpack such an experience, to actually have them take personal responsibility and move away from that from such an aspect of thinking. Yeah.
Well said. And talking about helping people unpack such kind of thinking, there is often tension between faith, communities, and mental health discourse. Right? So how can faith and psychology work together without dismissing either science or spirituality?
Well, very good question. The tension that there exists between, you say, faith and communities and mental health. Okay, so it depends on what school of thought a therapist might adopt. Okay. What we are trying to discuss here today, the talk we are having, is that the two cannot be separated, really. Okay. You see, in God, in granting man awareness, or let's say knowledge, and even to study science, in a sense, is a form of revelation. Okay, for human beings to appreciate really who they are and where they come from, and even the value of the cosmos. Okay, such knowledge is not outside God. Okay, neither is the knowledge of man's behavior and perceptions outside God. It isn't. It's in fact all this knowledge are present. Actually, is only possible in Him. Okay. And for us as human beings to come to the point where we would want to divorce our own perceptions and awareness from Him, and that is God, we will have actually missed the mark. Okay, we can't. Rather, in speaking as I do, it's not like I kind of try and avoid the very fact that there are those whom would find what I say not, or have misgivings about what I speak about, because you find that there are those who don't believe, but are also very much academics and professionals in the field of medicine or even psychology. Okay, and I would say this, Bramwel, to each his own, in the sense that everyone is entitled to some form of opinion about something.
Sure.
Okay, and as such, you find that there are varied opinions, as there are men in the face of the earth. But the truth forever remains to be what it is. You can accept it or deny it. In that regard, then, yeah, it's unfortunate that you find those who would argue against faith and mental health being things that cannot be separated, and not even wanting to put them together. But regarding one's experience, we are talking about existence. Okay, this word is a bit hard, but existential. This is an existential theory, which simply just is about one's experience in life, which does include one's spiritual formation. And if you are a Christian or Catholic, you have gone from the outset. At least it is expected that you've done your catechism. And and there is that one question, actually, the very first one in the. I'll have to refer to that. I'll have to refer to this one. The very first question in the question answer catechism that asks, why did God create us? We are told it's actually from the Baltimore Catechism, question number 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So part of our human formation does touch on, and that is if and when one is Christian and Catholic, they would have come across such a question: why did God create you? And we are told, we are told that He creates us to know Him, to love Him, and serve Him in this world, and to be happy with Him forever in the next. Now think of it. That is one thing that a Christian, who is also a professional and a psychologist, for example, have had in their experience. as a professional, how will you have that individual separate their knowledge of their contemporary learning, which is psychology and health and the same medicine, and their faith? They can't. They actually merge there. So in serving God, is in his practice of his profession. In being happy, is in doing that thing well for him. Actually, this is in the vocation of human beings. Actually, that brings us to another point of this particular discussion, but I don't know. That suffices for an answer for now, I think.
All right. And as we are winding up, Daktari, our time is up. Just maybe in 30 seconds, if someone listening right now feels fragmented, restless, unsupported over the abyss of life, what is the first step towards restoring psychological and spiritual integration?
Very well. So, as already stated, the two are different but merge together to help human beings remain sound, okay? One's mental health and faith, okay? And it is proper in the issue of mental health to find a professional that knows what they are doing, okay? And in this case we have counseling psychologists, okay? And that is in the case of, okay, let's just say that. We have counseling psychologists or clinical psychologists, okay, who could help one pick through their thinking, okay? Because you find people having cognitive distortion, so one can be helped to pick through such things and reorder their thinking to find the best way forward. The other thing is about finding a proper shepherd. Christ is the one that speaks of him being the good shepherd, okay? But he did as well leave other shepherds for us to help us along the path of our lives on earth. And these are the priests, okay? Their job is to help talk us, number one, help us at least make sense of the mystery of life, okay? By the grace given them, the grace of their office given them through the ordination, okay? Because you also want to find a good shepherd who actually has the grace of office to be able to guide one through the complexity of our existence. And it's a journey. Actually, in psychology, we speak of this being a psychologist journeys with a client through their experience to bring them around. Okay? It's not anything that happens by the click of a finger, but it's something that takes a while.
All right.
Yep.
Well, Daktari, well explained. I think that is it for now. We've laid the foundation, and I believe that if some time next week, God willing, we'll now build on what we've explained today.
Indeed. Right. Thank you very much, Bramwel, for the audience.
All right. Thank you so much, Daktari, for your time as you go back to the office or for the rest of the day. I do wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. You too have a very good day.
All right.
And I wish you the very best and a good year ahead.
Thank you so much. My dear listener, that is it from us, and thank you for your company from 6 all the way. I do wish you a very, very productive Monday. Kwaheri.
This is Radio Waumini 88.